Hi, it's Brenton from Effortless Swimming, former national swimmer and coach. Today, we're exploring how a few small changes to your stroke can make a big difference with your swimming performance here on the Physical Performance Show.
Failure is not an option.
I've had my ups and my downs.
I think it's an absolutely breakthrough experience.
Welcome to the Physical Performance Show, the show designed to inspire the pursuit of your physical best performance. I'm your host, Brad Beer. Listen in as we delve into how the world's top physical performers achieve their success, as well as the highs, the lows, and the journey of getting there. Let's get ready, set, let's go. Welcome to the Physical Performance Show, brought to you by earSHOTS Bluetooth headphones, our upcoming Rinnie McGregor live stream event, Fueling for the Endurance Athlete, and of course, Pogo Physio's telehealth consultations. I'm Brad Beer, sports physiotherapist and exercise scientist by trade and training, and founder of Pogo Physio. Each week, we'll bring you the latest and greatest information and inspiration designed to help you perform at your physical best. And of course, we do this across a range of our different episodes, interest editions, coaches' corners, featured performers, the occasional catch-up episode, and of course, the very popular expert editions. And hot off the back of last week's expert edition, which focused on all things optimizing calf strain rehabilitation, featuring La Trobe University researchers Brady Green and Dr. Tanya Pizzari, we keep the expert edition theme going with today's episode 277, featuring founder of Effortless Swimming, Brenton Ford. Now, by way of bio, Brenton has had swimming in his genes for longer than he can remember. Brenton himself was an elite junior swimmer, making nationals finals, before going on to start his now 14-year career in coaching, and along the way having coached masters teams to 5 national club championships before commencing Effortless Swimming. And talk about a success story, Effortless Swimming is the swimming technique platform for athletes looking to optimize their performance world over. I've been following Effortless Swimming on YouTube, whereby Brenton has accrued almost 200,000 subscribers, and over on Instagram, where Brenton regularly publishes brilliant content around improving our swim performance and stroke. Effortless Swimming specializes in faster swim technique for adult swimmers and triathletes, utilizing underwater filming, freestyle clinics, camps, and of course, online coaching. There's also a great membership that Effortless Swimming provide for those who are keen to optimize their stroke and performance. And that's the central theme for this expert edition, optimizing our swim stroke. Now, yes, it is one very much for the triathletes, of course, multi-sport athletes and swimmers. However, if you are a running-based athlete who enjoys the occasional dip, there is something in this episode for you as well. And during today's episode, you'll hear Brenton share around the number one thing that we can do to improve our swimming speed. Brenton breaks down the constituents and the characteristics of a good and efficient swim stroke. Brenton shares around the rules of a good catch phase of the stroke, what to do with our kick, how to incorporate our breathing for optimal performance, and so much more. And as you'd expect, there's a great physical challenge coming your way as well. So get set for the learnings on this, a literal deep dive into all things optimizing your swim stroke with swim coach maestro, founder of Effortless Swimming, Brenton Ford. Brenton Ford of Effortless Swimming. This is a real treat, something I've been looking forwards to for quite a while. Welcome to the Physical Performance Show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Brad. Glad to be here.
I mentioned off air that Brenton, you are one of my favorite YouTube channels that I've subscribed to. And I know many people listening in today will already be on the Effortless Swimming YouTube channel. If they're not, please go and do that right now. The work, the content you put out, I know how much effort goes into producing content, and it's exceptional, Brenton. So firstly, selfishly from myself to you, thank you for your contribution you've made to my swimming from afar.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And look, I love making videos, and look, for me, that it helps me explore the stroke and, you know, ways that people can swim better and how I can coach better. So I think it's somewhat selfish for me as well, because it's something that I do enjoy. But I love that people can take away some learnings and improve their swimming just from watching them. So it's I'm happy to contribute that way because, yeah, I love it.
In the lead up to a recent Ironman, I finished Cairns Ironman. I think most swims sessions I was doing, I had a Brenton Ford something or other going around my head, the power diamond. And we'll talk about some of these aspects, but you've been in my head for a while, Brenton. Brenton, to give context around your sporting background and also your professional life, can you share a little bit about, you know, how this all came about, Effortless Swimming?
Yeah, I was a swimmer from a very young age. So mum and dad had me in the pool since I could walk. And my dad and my granddad were also swimmers and coaches. And so I wasn't thinking I'd go down that line of work, but it just so happened that I loved to do it since I first started doing it at around 18. But my competitive swimming background, I made a few national age group finals as a teenager. And then when I started university, I stopped swimming competitively, and I basically started coaching. And I was just off Olympic trial level. I was about, I think it was 0.1 of a second off the 50 backstroke as a competitive swimmer. And but I was never going to make the team or anything, but I really enjoyed coaching and then helping others improve their swimming. So I started that when I was 19, and I'm 33 at the moment. So I've been coaching for 14 years and started Effortless Swimming about 12 years ago. And it was just a way to kind of share some of the things that I was teaching in person. I started at Melbourne University, teaching a squad there, moved on to a master's squad here in Melbourne, did that for 8 or 9 years. We won some national titles there in terms of national point score. And then I sort of stopped doing that when I had my first child and just started sort of full-time running the business and traveling around, running camps and clinics. And the main thing that we do now is video analysis, underwater filming, helping people improve their technique, because that's where I see a huge amount of opportunity available for people to get better. So that's where we focus now.
In filling such a needed niche there, Brenton, there's not a swimmer on the planet that wouldn't want an underwater analysis done of their stroke.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And look, if you're a swim coach and you're looking for work, there is no shortage of people who want film, like underwater filming done. And like I always get asked for private coaching, that sort of thing, but I don't have the capacity to do it anymore. But there's just such a need for people wanting to have their technique improved. And with filming, you can't hide. You see everything that's going on. And even from being experienced with improving technique, you can't see everything that's going on under the water from just above it. So when you get that camera in, you film yourself from the front, from the side, it really opens your eyes as to what you can do to get quicker. And I say it's like ripping off a Band-Aid. You know, it's a little bit painful at first. Some people go, I don't want to see what I look like, because for them, they might be a bit embarrassed about it, or they just don't want to, take that step. But once they do, it's the best thing that you can do for swimming.
In my work as a sports physio, Brenton, working in endurance sports, we do similar for runners on a treadmill, sometimes outside, and it's the same often response. It's I really don't want to see myself. I think we all have that aversion to how we think we're moving to actually the reality, but there's nothing like confronting it head on and improving it. Brenton, in your Friday feedback videos of late, I think you're up to maybe 26, 27 of those. They're terrific. And case studies, like, it's mind-boggling that with just a bit of intervention around stroke correction, people can drastically change the speed of their swimming.
Yeah, well, I think it's a lot of people have never been taught to swim before, especially adults who take it up as an adult, and they've never been taught at a young age. And even those that did learn early on, they might have been out of the pool for a while, having kids or working. Now they're just getting back into it. They're just in there and they're swimming laps, and there's no real thought going into it apart from perhaps something that they were taught 20 years ago. And so I think by just seeing that the footage that we put up of average swimmers and then elite swimmers, and we compare it and we show what some of those common areas are, you can really make some big differences. And I think the other thing as well, and you're probably used to this too, is like some good cues, some good things to keep in mind when you're swimming. it can make such a difference. So I think just very simple things like that can also help. And some of those is obviously being able to relax when you swim. We talk about like reach and rotate. You don't want to start the catch too soon. There's a whole bunch there. And sometimes people will take one of those things and it'll completely transform the way that they're swimming.
Yeah, it's just finding that cue that sticks, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And everyone's different. And like I put out a lot of content. I mean, you put out a lot of content with the podcast and stuff. And it's eventually someone will come across a piece of information that'll work for them and it'll gel and they'll take it on board and be like, that's a game changer. And I've had that for swimming. I've had that, like I love to surf, so I get that listening to different surf coaches, and then I try and feed that back into my own coaching, what I pick up from a different sport or a different profession, because you can learn so much from that as well.
Brenton, before we explore some of the specifics around swim strokes and biomechanics and cues, technique tips, Effortless Swimming, there was no accident in that name. I'm just curious, were there a few alternatives, or was it always going to be Effortless Swimming?
I wanted something that people would listen, that hear the name and they'd go, yeah, that's what I want. And my favourite thing is if I'm at a clinic and we're working on some things and they'll say, oh, that felt effortless. It's like, yes, all right, good, we got it. So yeah, no mistake at all. But it takes a lot of work to get to effortless. And I think that's the misconception that people have when they listen to they hear the name Effortless Swimming, is it's not just something that happens without any effort. You've got to put in the work to get there. But once you get there, it's a great feeling, similar to running or riding. Like when you do the work and you've spent the time, then you can really get to that point where you can make it feel effortless, even though you're exerting yourself and you're working hard. But there's that sweet spot. And I had Julie McDonald, Olympian from the 80s and 90s. She's a swimmer, on our podcast recently. And one of the things she mentioned was her best race. She hit the wall and like it didn't feel that hard. That's that kind of thing where often people's best event or their best race, it doesn't feel like it's hard work. Everything just sort of falls into place. And it's that kind of thing we're going for.
And I think we all watch on with great admiration and appreciation, say the Australian Olympic swim trials, which have just finished, whether it's the 1,500 metres, 400, whatever it is, just the seeming effortlessness, even though the pace is phenomenal, the output's max. It's just a beautiful thing to watch no matter what the sport. One of my favourite videos, Brenton, from your YouTube gallery is Dan Smith's sub 1 minute 100 metre freestyle. And we'll tag this up in the show notes because it's a viral video. That is out of this planet.
Yeah, it's unreal, isn't it? So for those listening to this who they haven't seen, Dan Smith, he was touted as the next Ian Thorpe, basically as a kid growing up, and then sort of went off the rails a little bit and brought himself back and started to make a comeback. And he was going to try out for the Tokyo Olympic team. And then when it got postponed, he said, I'm at a point in my life where this isn't what I want to do. Like I'm happy to call it here. So he didn't end up keep training for the trials. But I did some filming with him probably 18 months, 2 years ago now. And so we recorded him swimming this 100 metre freestyle. His stroke rate is around 50 strokes a minute, which if you don't know it's quite low. And he swims, there's two that we did. One, he swam at 1 minute 10 and he makes it look like it's a 2 minute 100. Like it looks so easy, but it was incredibly faster than most people could go sprinting. And it's impressive. And then when I was actually there filming him in person, you just watch him swim and you go, this guy's a fish. And it is just something else. And it's awesome to watch people at that level. And it's not until you're actually in person where you see it and you go, there's another level to where most of the people that we work with are at. And I know you've had a lot of elite runners and that sort of thing on your podcast, and it'd be no different watching those guys in person too, which I'm sure you've seen.
Yeah, totally. And actually, Brenton, we featured Dan Smith and Dan's story way back on episode 137. So if you missed the backstory of Dan, jump over, tune into that one. And also check out this Effortless 100. It's something else. Brenton, before we jump into the specifics, the concept of coaching, I hadn't heard it put this simply and well ever, really. Swim coaching, I think many people that have swum through their adolescence know of coaches who have been, pretty challenging type coaches, very much just do the work and, throw the athletes, so to speak, against the wall and see who lasts and who doesn't. Things have evolved so much, but a seasoned swimmer said to me recently, there's a difference between a coach and a trainer. I'm just interested in, as your lifelong profession and as someone that's really just always stayed at the forefront of learning on the art of coaching, what do you think's the difference between an effective coach and a coach that maybe is more of a trainer, just, prescribes the laps, prescribes the workout?
Yeah, I think from my experience, my dad was my coach, and he was a great coach, and I really enjoyed it. And it could easily have gone the other way had he been a trainer, I think. But for me, the coaches that I've related to, most of the ones that talk to you as a person, and you sometimes get those coaches, I think, that can just shout at you and talk at you, and they're not actually talking like you're an adult. And so that's what I've tried to do as a coach personally is just talk to them like they're a real person, and only be a hard ass when it's needed and when you've got the right person in front of you. So especially with the work that I'm doing, which is mostly technical coaching, people they're looking at booking into a clinic and they're sitting there going, this might be painful because I'm going to have to look at my stroke. There might be a few other people there. They're probably going to be a bit embarrassed with how they're swimming. And so if I were to approach that and just say, like, why are you doing this? Just change this. I can't believe. If I was to have that sort of attitude, then I wouldn't get people coming back and they wouldn't enjoy the process. So if you can sort of gently steer people in the right direction, make suggestions and present it in a way where they haven't done anything wrong, and they haven't done anything wrong because they're just doing what they're doing. They've never been showed any different. I think that's a really good approach. And I was Wayne Goldsmith, who's basically a coach of coaches. He wrote this article about Bill Sweetenham, who's a legendary swim coach. And I read this article about 5 years ago, and I remember reading it, and it completely changed my approach to coaching. And basically what it was asking was, can Bill Sweetenham still coach in today's world where it's a bit more softer coaching instead of hard-ass coaching, I guess? And the answer was yes. And it looked at Bill and how he coaches athletes and the way that he'll get them to do a 100 time trial at the end or do an extra set and work a bit harder is not by telling them to. He'll ask questions and hopefully lead them in that direction and get them to make the choice to be able to do what's needed to get them to an elite level. And I think that's such a great approach. It's asking the right questions and getting people to come up with that on their own.
And to buy into the process.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and I think the easy way is to tell people what to do and to yell. But if you can sit back and think about it and get them to buy into it, then you're going to have them with you for much longer, and they're going to enjoy it a lot more too, I think. Yeah,
totally. Brenton, a good stroke, we often hear that thrown around. They've got a nice stroke, an efficient stroke. It's a big open question. Answer it however you think's the simplest way to convey some learnings audibly. But what is and I guess we should specify, we're talking about freestyle here, given that so many of the listenership are triathletes and open water swimmers. So a freestyle stroke, what constitutes a good stroke? Maybe are there certain key things you immediately look for?
Yeah, there's a couple of key things, and this is keeping in mind that there's lots of different styles to freestyle. And a couple of things that we look at is obviously body position. Head, hips and heels should be at the surface, because the number one thing you can do to swim faster is reduce your drag. So body position is important. Good head position. And I think that where people go wrong often is that often people either look too far down or they'll look too far forwards. So I know when I was taught, it was always about looking straight down, but a lot of people will bury their heads and they go too deep. So if you're swimming open water, you're probably best looking at about 45 degrees or somewhere in that sort of range. A good stroke will often be front quadrant. And what that means is that there'll always be something in front of the head. So a hand and arm always in front of the head. And that means that when you enter the water, you should be reaching forwards for a little bit before you start tipping the fingertips down and beginning the catch. So you're not just entering and pulling immediately through. There's that little bit of time spent reaching and extending. So front quadrant for most people is what we'd often want to see. And then a good catch is paramount. And that's one of the key things that we often focus on is a catch. And the catch is basically the movement from when you're fully reaching out the front to when your fingertips are tipping down just before you pass underneath your shoulder. So that's the catch. And to me, that's the 80-20 of the stroke. It's the 20% of the stroke that can really make 80% of the difference if you do a good job of that. Especially if you are a triathlete, you've got a wetsuit on, you're probably not going to have to worry too much about your kick. The buoyancy is taken care of with the wetsuit. A good catch will overcome a lot of other flaws in the stroke.
A good catch. And just to clarify there, Brenton, the catch being the part out in front through to when the fingers are, did you say underneath the shoulder? Underneath the body?
Yeah, just about to pass underneath the shoulder. Yeah, so that first part of the underwater motion.
Yeah,
that's what we'd consider the catch.
And so just to reiterate there, Brenton, you mentioned body position, heads, hips, and heels at the surface. So I think that's fairly easy to visualize. If you have your head too far down, then you're going to hit a lot more drag. And if you have it too far up, likewise, you shared that great tip. If you're an open water swimmer, maybe look, the ideal angle of looking forwards would be about 45 degrees. What would that be in the pool, Brenton?
Sometimes, usually similar. Or a little bit further down. So if you are looking straight down, there's nothing wrong with it, but you're going to have much better awareness around what's happening in the ocean or in the lake with that vision slightly forward. So the other way I'd explain that would be 1 or 2 meters in front of you in terms of where your eyes are looking. So instead of straight down, it's 1 or 2 meters in front of that is a good range, because then if you've got people in front, if you've got a buoy in the water somewhere, like you'll be able to see things a whole lot better than if you're looking straight down.
Yeah, so that's a great cue because it takes out the guesswork from the angle, right? 1 to 2 meters in front. Then you mentioned the front quadrant, making sure there's a hand or arm in front of the head. I think you said at all times. And then obviously the good catch. And you described the catch as the 80-20 rule there, 20% of the stroke, but it's got 80% of the difference. So if we can just dig a little deeper around the catch, what are some of the golden rules of a good catch? I'm going to selfishly ask, I used to enter and deviate out to the side with my hand, and I've had various opinions over the years about not letting my hand drift out to the side and others saying catch the water sooner. I mean, feel free to just answer any way you like.
Yeah, so with the catch, the main thing we want to work towards is what we'd call a high elbow position. The way you might picture that, it's not elbows should be near the surface. I have heard coaches talk about a high elbows like 1 inch, your elbows 1 inch below the surface. But if you look at any footage of elite swimmers, I bet you couldn't find one where the elbow is 1 inch below the surface. So to me, I think that's quite a confusing topic for a lot of people. So the way that we describe a high elbow catch, it's a bit more like an elbow forward. So with an elite level catch, when you're out in front with your arm fully extended, when your fingertips and your forearm start moving down, you want to keep your upper arm and your elbow in almost the same position for a little while your forearm and hand tip down. Not for the whole time. You don't need to get this crazy 90-degree angle with your arm, but just a little bit of that will help you set up this high elbow position. So that's really what we're working towards. And as I said before, you don't want to go extreme with it. So sometimes people will sort of look at an elite swimmer and then they'll be doing these really funky things with their catch and going into some very uncomfortable positions with their arm to achieve it. So it just needs to be slightly elbow forwards. That's all we're going for. The other thing that can help too is your hand and forearm's your big paddle. So we don't want to bend the wrist forwards or backwards. It's where you've split your paddle in half. So keep your hand and forearm together. And the way that I like to explain that, and I've heard it explained, I think from Bill Sweetenham actually, was you want to elevate your wrist, meaning that you're just going to slightly pop your wrist up to keep this big paddle working together and keep that firm. The other thing too is I like to think of the catch as the setup phase in the stroke. So it's not necessarily the power phase. So if you're trying to muscle your way through the catch, so if you're trying to pull with a lot of force and just go for broke straight away, it's not a strong position because it's overhead and that movement's not that strong, particularly compared to what's happening when you pass underneath your shoulders. So you think of that as the setup phase. The aim is get yourself in a high elbow position. Then you can start to apply a bit more power to it. Because I think sometimes people just rip hard immediately and they're just they're catching a lot of air, a lot of bubbles and putting a bit of stress on their shoulders as well. So there's some of the key things that we like to teach. And the last one that I'll mention that I've found useful too is slow to fast. So movements in swimming should be slow to fast. And when you enter, you reach forwards and you start your catch, that part of the stroke should be a little bit slower than it is out the back of the stroke. So you're kind of accelerating the hand and the arm through the water, but start a little bit slower. And that will help you get rid of the bubbles and give you a bit more time to set up the catch, and it will make it a bit easier on your shoulders as well.
Gosh, that's brilliant, and so much there. Just a couple of things that jumped out to me there, Brenton. It's a setup phase, the catch of the stroke. You did mention something that I'm not sure if I fully grasped about when the fingertips start moving down. What did you say at that point, Brenton?
Yeah, so the with an elite level catch, the upper arm, so the first part of your arm and your elbow will almost stay in the same position, while your fingertips and forearm, I think so, move downwards just a little bit, not for the whole time, but we want to try and keep that upper arm in the same position for a split second.
A split second. Elevate the wrist slightly. You use that brilliant phrase or cue that the hand and the wrist are the big paddle, so don't break them in half by tipping the wrist too far either way. Keep it firm, you said as well, and then don't try and apply power too early. Slow to fast. It's such a powerful cue. And that leads to an obvious sort of area to explore, Brenton, if we may, and that's the exit. Should the exit of the stroke be conscious or unconscious? I've heard different things over the years, from throwing pebbles to not even worrying about it. I mean, any insight there?
Yeah, I think like most things, the truth lies somewhere in between. So I would suggest finishing just past your hip. Make sure you press back far enough where it's just past your hip. I have seen on swimmers that I've done analysis for where they're so short with that back end of the stroke that they're coming out. The earliest I've seen is before the belly button. So it's like half a stroke. It's like, well, if you could just press back and finish past your hip, you will get so much more out of that stroke. So I think, number one, finish past your hip. That's the most important part of that. And in terms of the power, you don't want to overpower it where you've got this big flick out the back and you're continuing to apply a lot of force and power all the way through, even past when the hand's exited. But I think you do want to keep pressure on all the way to the back. And if you accelerate through the stroke, that'll take care of it. So, I've certainly heard a lot of different opinions, but just based on what I see from analysis, I think it's important to just make sure you finish in the right spot. And you try and keep the palm of the hand facing behind you all the way through, except for the very end where the hand will naturally turn into the body.
To exit. And so is that something that you regularly are cueing swimmers around, their exit? I mean, obviously there's context to the individual.
Yeah, no, it's a really common one. People will either finish too short, coming out or before the hip, or their hand will sometimes turn towards the body. So the palm of their hand isn't facing behind them from very early on. So they're kind of slicing their hand out the back. And so we'll often work on that as well. So it's those two things that often go wrong for people.
And finally on the catch, Brenton, and I know you could share tips and insights on this for hours, but the fingers, with some of the elite footage that you put up of Ariana Titmus or you pick the swim up, you often see variations in some fingers being relaxed and some being closer together. What are some sort of key things to look out for there with the fingers with the catch? And the thumb.
Yeah. So they did a study, and I can't remember it exactly, but I think it's 10 degrees. So you can have an angle from your little finger to your index finger of 10 degrees. Now, obviously, you're not going to be wanting to think too much about that when you're swimming. Yeah. But all that means is that it's okay to have a little bit of a gap, because you'll make your paddle bigger that way, because the water won't go through it. You'll still sort of hold it, but not too much, obviously. So it's that happy medium. A bit of a gap is fine. And I think most people, not most people, but a lot of people sometimes are too tense with their fingers if they've got them closed. So I like the term soft hands, where you want just enough tension in your hands to keep the shape, but then you want to relax it from there. Any more and it's wasted effort, and any less and everything's going to move around too much. So that happy medium in between again. Some
brilliant cues there. And I think what I tend to observe is that the elites do tend to have that little bit of opening, which is exactly as you say, probably just instinctively having a bigger paddle.
Yeah, and I think too, with the amount of force that some of these guys and girls are pulling through with, especially, and you see this with Mac Horton, he's probably got the biggest gap that you will often see. I think it's just that when they're applying that sort of force, that's where the fingers naturally go. And so they can't, it's physically quite difficult to keep it completely closed. So I think that's where most of it comes in from when you do see quite a large gap. But the majority of them will have that little bit of a gap. A few sheets of paper is how I've heard it described.
You're listening to Brenton Ford of Effortless Swimming on this expert edition around all things optimising the swimming stroke. Support for today's show comes from earSHOTS Bluetooth headphones. If you are a cyclist or runner who charges, then earSHOTS Bluetooth headphones are your audio solution. You see, earSHOTS Bluetooth headphones were forged in the rugged wilderness of New Zealand's national parks by CEO and co-founder of earSHOTS Bluetooth headphones, James Bell-Booth, who himself was sick of his earphones falling out of his ears. And I caught up recently with James, where James shared around the origins of this now great sporting equipment success story. James, I'm curious to know what has driven you to enter a competitive marketplace and spend the last 7 years creating, innovating and progressing earSHOTS Bluetooth headphones.
I think probably if I were to sum it up in one word, it is performance. But performance not of audio, performance of an athlete, of a person. My journey with this started 7 years ago. I was doing a lot of training, 3, 4, 5 hour runs or rides. And I just got intensely frustrated with the distraction that would occur with current headphone designs, whether that be the ergonomics of them, the constant having to refit of them in your ear, the constant threat of them. Okay, are these falling out? I'm now getting really sweaty. My movements, I'm a bit more tired, so my movements are a bit less controlled. And so I just got so sick of being distracted out of the zone. I know for me, when I'm training, I like to kind of try and find that zone where you're in pain, but it's manageable and you're moving. And the last thing you need in that, when you're trying to find that place, is things distracting you. And the analogy I use is a watch. You put a watch on, you don't think about it again generally. I wanted an experience for earphones. You put them on and you don't think about them again. And that's really kind of what's driven this magnetic design and experience.
So if you are a runner or cyclist who charges, you're frustrated with your earphones dislodging, or you're sick of your headphones going flat, then the good news is James and the team at earSHOTS have provided 10% off for the Physical Performance Show's listeners simply by using the code TPPS over at checkout. Receive 10% off the recommended retail price of $169.75. Support for today's show also comes from our upcoming live stream event featuring UK-based sports dietitian Rinny McGregor. Now, Rinny featured on a very popular expert edition back on episode 258, exploring fueling for the endurance athlete. So it's a natural progression, given the interest and engagement with that expert edition, that our first live stream event for 2021 will be featuring Rinny and extrapolating further on the concept of fueling for the endurance athlete. During the 3-hour live stream to be held on Saturday, the 4th of September, Rinny will cover 4 modules. What do we mean by the endurance athlete? Common myths: lighter makes you faster, fat adaptation, and should we treat male and female athletes the same? It's going to be a bumper learning opportunity. Tickets are just $49 per person, with a ticket price including a post-event recording of the live stream, ideal for those that cannot make the allotted live stream time, and of course, PDF copies of the notes. To secure your ticket to Rinny McGregor's live stream event, Fueling the Endurance Athlete, jump over to pogophysio.com.au/Rinny McGregor live stream. RENEE McGregor live stream. Now, the good news is, if you are a patron supporter of the Physical Performance Show, as a way of saying thank you for your monthly contribution of $5 US per month, we'll grant you free access to this live stream event and all upcoming live stream events. Stay tuned for your login details as the event gets closer. Rest assured though, your seat at the table, pardon the pun, is secure for the Rinny McGregor live stream event. And if you would like to become a Physical Performance Show patron supporter, jump over to Patreon, Patreon. Search for the Physical Performance Show, and there you can pledge your monthly support from just $5 per month and receive free access to these live streams, both back catalogued and all upcoming events. For now, let's jump back with this week's featured guest, Brenton Ford of Effortless Swimming, on this expert edition exploring how we can optimise our swim stroke. Brenton, the kick. Where do we start here? Tips. I've often heard you refer to the elite swimmers. Look at the balance that they have. Such a balanced stroke. You talk about foot position, and you've challenged me a few times with what are my feet doing. Any tips you can offer here? Obviously, there's plenty on the kick.
Yeah. So most of the people I work with are triathletes. Most of them don't have great range through their ankles. So we only want to work within what we currently can. And obviously it doesn't hurt to improve your ankle flexibility, but it's not something that you want to do too much if you are running, because stiffer ankles are kind of better for running from what I've heard. So we just want to operate within what you can currently do. But with your kick, the main thing is we don't want it to slow you down. So some things that will make you slow down are the toes pointing to the bottom of the pool instead of behind you. So as best we can, we want to try and point the toes a little bit. And if you do have tight ankles, then a way you can overcome this a little bit is to point your toes, but turn your feet slightly inwards, almost like pigeon-toed a bit. And it gives you a little bit more flexion. So that's a way to be able to overcome it somewhat. The other thing we want to make sure is that the kick's relatively small and it doesn't come much outside the line of your body. So if we were looking front on, and we had a camera placed directly in front of you, if we see your feet coming too far outside of your shoulders and the rest of your body, then it's probably increasing the drag. So it can come out a little bit, but not too much. So we want to keep the kick fairly small. I like to picture a bucket twice the size of a household bucket, something you might have in the garden. Keep the feet within that sort of range. That's a way to picture it. And the other thing is your kick should be used primarily for rhythm and timing, balance, not for propulsion if you're doing triathlon, if you've got stiff ankles. So don't try and speed yourself up by kicking harder, because that's going to tire you out. Even if you're elite swimmers, when they bring that kick in, they only do it for the last 50 of a 200 or a 400 or a 1500, because it takes so much more effort to kick hard. So don't expect to be able to be kicking super hard for your entire session and to be not to be fatigued. So yeah, just keep it steady. And if you just get the timing and the balance right, that's the main thing there.
That's the key. Any cues for timing? I mean, we've all heard, we all know those that swim, of course, 3-beat kick, 6-beat kick. Obviously, the 6-beat kick, as you just said, you might pull in it at most at the end or maybe at the beginning to try and improve your position. But are there any cues that you found effective over your years coaching with the kick to help people to get the rhythm, the timing of the kick?
Yeah, there's two that come to mind. So the first one would be with the timing of it, and it depends on what type of kick you're using. But with the timing of it, there's two ways you can think of it. One is that you want to kick down on your right foot when your left hand enters. So it's sort of opposite there. So left hand enters, right foot kicks down. Or the other way you can do it too is you want to kick down on your right foot when your right hand is going through the catch motion. So it's the same thing, but it's two different ways to think about it. Now, if you get that, it basically syncs everything up and coordinates everything through the body so that everything's connected when you go through the catch and the rotation and everything. Now, that takes a bit of practice to be able to feel for that timing. But if you're just kicking very easily, very lightly, and you're in the pool next time, just see if you can feel your, say, right foot kicking down at the same time you're going through the catch on that right side. And when you do get it, you'll probably notice you get this nice little drive and nice little oomph with each stroke. So that's the kind of timing that we want. And you don't want to be thinking about that all the time, because it's hard to sort of think about that and do everything else as well. But it can be good to do for 50 or 100 meters. But the other thing is, if you are doing triathlon or longer distance swimming, you may not be best suited to a 6-beat kick, which you might just think of that as like a continuous kick. Don't try and count 6 kicks to every two arm strokes. But you're probably going to be better off with a 2 or a 4 beat kick. Now, a 2 beat kick is one foot kicks down and you take 1 stroke, and then so it's 1 kick, 1 arm stroke. That's fairly common, especially with the wetsuit on, and it's very efficient. It's a really efficient way of swimming with a 2 beat kick. But the other way that's really efficient as well is a 4 beat kick. And the way that you can think of that is it's 1 kick on 1 stroke, and then on the next arm stroke you'll take 3. So the timing is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that can be, and when I've worked with people with our coaching, it's a lot of them have developed that 4 beat kick, because often it doesn't come naturally to a lot of people. So they've developed it, and for them that's really improved their 400 time trial or their threshold pace, and that's allowed them to take sometimes 5-10 seconds off their overall 100 pace when they start to get that refined, because it's a really efficient way to swim, but sometimes it just gives you that a little bit more propulsion and so on. So a 4 beat kick's good to develop. And I think we've got a video on our YouTube channel somewhere from about a year ago, which you can look up.
Yeah, and we'll try and tag that up in the show notes. But it sounds like kicking doesn't necessarily happen most efficiently subconsciously. There's often a conscious process that can improve it.
Yeah. That's exactly right. And eventually you want it to become subconscious, so you don't have to think about it. But often in the beginning, when we're just trying to dial everything in, it's definitely a conscious thing that you have to think about. And there's a swimmer that I've been working with for just over 12 months now, and her kick was really lazy. It was like a passenger to the rest of her stroke. And so we've had to work on those couple of things that I mentioned. And over the last 12 plus months, her sort of times have come down from, I think she was like 128 for a max effort 100. She's down to 122 or 121 now. And her overall threshold times are similar sort of thing. And a big part of that's her kick. And so for a lot of people, it can be worthwhile thinking about and refining.
Yeah, some great tips there, Brenton. Thank you. Breathe in. I know I'm putting you through the ringer here, Brenton, but breathe in bilaterally, unilaterally, doesn't matter. Is it just where the body wants to go, let it go? Obviously, it's always individual, but just any insights there?
Yeah, this is something that there's a bit of debate about often from different coaches. But for me, I came from a swimming background, so it was often all about you've got to breathe to both sides. You've got to do it all the time. And I think there's some truth to it. But what I recommend to most of the adults that I coach these days is there's nothing wrong with breathing to the one side. And if it's every 2 strokes, especially in a race, then you're probably going to get a bit more air in. You can hold a faster effort. So don't breathe every 3 strokes just because someone told you to. It's an individual thing, and there's nothing wrong with breathing every 2. It's a great skill to have, to be able to breathe bilaterally. So in training, I think it is worthwhile doing at least some of your laps or your session to the opposite side, but it doesn't need to be the whole time. And there's no set breathing pattern either. So if you're in a 50-meter pool, don't feel like every breath needs to be on like 2 strokes or 3 strokes. You can mix it up. If you look at Ariana Titmus, so in her 400, she was breathing 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4. So she mixed it up within each lap. So there's no hard and fast rules. I think it's good to find a pattern and then stick to it for that event or that set that you're doing.
Brenton, brilliant. Any advice that you'd offer on what to do actually with the exhale, the component of the stroke? Should it be a conscious exhalation, subconscious? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, at the start, sometimes it's good to just bring some awareness to what you're doing if you've never thought about it. And one of the mistakes that people often make is they exhale from their mouth, and the majority of it should come from your nose. We find that your heart rate can be a little bit more controlled, a little bit lower when you do exhale from your nose. And the way that you see most top freestylers doing it is after they get that inhale, they'll exhale really lightly. So some bubbles will leave the nose, sometimes the mouth as well. But then as they turn their face to the side, it's a big exhale through the nose. That's when they clear their lungs. So for the most part, the majority of that exhale will come as you turn your head to the side. But make sure it's primarily from the nose. And we've had I put out a video about 2 years ago just about that one tip. And the amount of comments under that video about people who were exhaling from the mouth and they changed it, and then they could swim double what they were before. They might have been only able to swim 50 metres, but they were able to go to 100 or 200. There was a huge amount of response to that. And so to me, that just showed it's a problem that doesn't get talked about enough.
And what is the benefit? I'm reflecting, I think I exhale through my mouth. What's the benefit of exhaling through the nose?
Yeah, scientifically, I couldn't tell you what it is. I only know from just working with people. Yeah, just from experience. But I think it's for whatever reason, it just for me, you can control your exhale a little bit more when it comes from the nose. When it comes from the mouth, it sometimes feels a bit rushed. So I think you feel a bit more breathless when you do it from the mouth. And so, scientifically, I was trying to search for it, how could this be explained? But haven't come across it yet. So that might be your area, Brad, I think.
Oh, I think we'll refer to greater minds that focus on that in the research. I know of positive psychology researcher Rory Darkins, who's featured from Cronulla, and Rory's actually doing some research around nasal breathing and running performance. So, I think you hear it often, this overlap of the importance of nasal breathing. So that's great. And
just don't breathe in through your nose. I've had one person email me say, I'm really struggling to breathe in through my nose. Might have misinterpreted that one.
Oh, gosh. And Brenton, hypoxic training, holding the breath, is that something that you'd encourage swimmers to do as part of a drill set, for example? Is there a benefit to that?
Yeah, we've kind of got to be careful with recommending this, but I think if you're just doing breath control work, which we do in training, and I recommend, it's I think it's great. So something that we did yesterday in the squad that I train with was 850s, and we just go 150 breathing every third stroke. The next one would be every 5, 7, and then 9 for the last one, and we'd repeat. Now the benefit to it's not really breath holding that, but it's just pushing yourself out and being able to hold that kind of breathing pattern. I find that swimmers that are tense or they're not comfortable in the water, they struggle to go past 5, a breathing pattern of every 5. But the more experienced the swimmer is, the more relaxed, the more comfortable they are, they can often get up to that 7 or that 9. So I think sometimes it's an indicator as to how comfortable you are in the water. Sometimes it's an indicator as to how easy you can make your swimming. So, if you are kicking really hard, you're not going to be able to do that 7 or that 9. So I think it's good to be able to see that. But and I think overall it does allow you to control and steady your breathing when it comes to doing a hard set or in a race. Because if you get comfortable being out of air or feeling like you're out of breath, and you can just sit through it, then you'll find that when the effort does start to come up in a race, that you're much more in control of what you're doing. So I quite like it. And is that something that you would recommend to athletes for running or anything like that? Are you doing any sort of hypoxic work?
It's an emerging space that is not. There's some people that talk about it and others that don't. It's probably a little bit like swimming. There's a lot of practices around it, but not necessarily the science there, because I guess it's a challenging thing to study. Brenton, turns and underwater. Obviously, if there's someone listening in that's training for a triathlon, they're not going to be turning in the open water, but I think we all want to improve our 100 time and our cycles and things. And I watched one of your videos around the turns, and I went to try one of the drills that you recommended with the kickboards, and I just got frustrated, and I went, I'm just going to keep turning however inefficiently I may be. I mean, it's a huge area, but what would be your top tip for turns and your top tip for underwater work, Brenton?
Yeah. So with the turns, even if you are doing triathlons and you're not going to use a flip turn or a tumble turn in your events, I think it's a worthwhile thing to do, because it might take you 10 or 15 minutes of dedicated practice to get it if you can't do it properly at the moment. But that can really make your swimming a lot more enjoyable and often a bit quicker for your cycles as well. So with the turns, the main mistake that people make is when they there's two actually. When they flip over, some people will use their hands to sort of flip them around. So their arms will do this big sort of spin, and they'll use that to try and get their body over. But the key to flipping over properly is as you're heading to the wall, take that last stroke and both hands should be at the hip. And then to initiate that flip, you want to do a little bit of a butterfly kick or a dolphin kick and tuck your head down to your chin. And you can kind of just use your hands to kind of press on the water to help you flip over. So flip over that way with your hands by your side. And then you want to make sure that you land on your back. So both feet should be planted. You're landing on your back, so you'll be facing up towards the sky or the ceiling. And then once your feet land, then you can do about a 45-degree turn and push off, and then do the rest as you're pushing off the wall. So most people, when they'll flip over and then they won't land on their back, they'll try and like almost completely turn before they hit the wall, but let yourself land on your back and then do a bit of a turn and push off.
Yeah, that's me. I'm somehow ending right over and facing the bottom of the pool by the time I push off the wall.
Yeah, gotcha. And then, look, you don't need to be doing 2 or 3 dolphin kicks or butterfly kicks off the wall. Just push off, go straight into freestyle because that's going to be faster for the majority of people.
You're listening to Brenton Ford on this expert edition of the Physical Performance Show, founder of Effortless Swimming, exploring all things optimising our swim stroke and performance. Now, if you missed last week's episode, it was an expert edition featuring La Trobe University researchers and physiotherapists Tanya Pizzari and Brady Green on all things calf muscle strain rehabilitation. If you are a coach, practitioner or athlete who's ever been bugged by that nuisance calf strain, then there is something in episode 276 for you. Here's a snippet of my conversation with Dr. Tanya Pizzari and Brady Green.
We know that if someone's getting older, they're more susceptible, and we know whenever you've had an injury in the past, you're probably more susceptible to get that same injury again. There was also some information, some moderate kind of association between other lower limb injuries and risk factor for calf. And, we could hypothesise that that's just simply because they've had time off because of those injuries and they haven't regained the capacity of the calf, because that goes very quickly. So if you stop loading the calf, you actually get, pretty quick kind of atrophy and loss of capacity of the calf.
To enjoy all of the learnings from episode 276, jump over to wherever it is that you enjoy your podcast from. Whilst there, peruse the archives dating right back to episode 1, featuring surf lifesaving Ironman champion Ali Day. For now, let's jump back with this week's featured guest, Brenton Ford of Effortless Swimming, on all things optimising our swim stroke and performance. Brenton, so many great cues, practical considerations there. I think we all appreciate that it's always going to be individual. Where do you, where people start, you're going to try and find the sweet spot and not overwhelm. But it must be common for you to hear in your line of work, gosh, I feel overwhelmed. I want to do it all. We all want to improve quickly. We can hear these great things and know that they'll help. Feet in the bucket, soft hands. But what advice would you give to the listener wanting to take some of these things on board but not overwhelming them and being comfortable with that approach?
Yeah, it's one of the most common things in swimming is that people get overwhelmed with the amount of information there is and how much there is to think about. And as you know, it's really, if people have got one thing to do, then they can do it. But even 2 can sometimes be distracting. So I think it's good just to pick one and then focus on that for a couple of weeks. We released this 5-day catch challenge. Basically, like over 5 days, I gave 1 drill and 1 short workout. And that's had a really good response and really good results from people going through it. I think because it's one thing each session or each day, and that way they're not worried about their kick, if they're working on their interests, it's just one thing each. Because quite often I'll have I will have worked with someone saying like a private session, this is a couple of years ago, and we'll work on an aspect of their stroke, and then I'll see them the next week and they said, and then I was thinking about like my recovery, and then I was trying to do this drill with it, and it's like, hang on a second, we didn't mention that. Like I didn't want you to focus on that. So it's so easy to get distracted. I think the best thing you can do is just keep it simple, choose one thing, and if it can be specific to you, whether you get filming from us or someone, or you see a coach and like get some professional help there, that's what's going to get results, is just one thing at a time, because you can't do 2 or 3 or 10.
Yeah, you'll just spin your wheels and get discouraged. And it seems like such an obvious question, I guess, but how do people know that these things are making a difference? I mean, the beauty of swimming is it's a constant. It's a 50-metre pool, a 25-metre pool, 33 yards or whatever. So obviously there's time in, but are there any sort of key performance tests that you like to give the swimmers that you work with to gauge the improvements?
Yeah, I quite like a 400 time trial's a good one for the majority of triathletes that I work with. If they're doing a Olympic distance to, even Ironman distance, a 400 time trial is a good gauge of where they're at. Doing that every 6 weeks is quite a good time frame to judge that improvement. So that's kind of the benchmark that we'd use with a lot of people, and even sometimes like an all-out 100. A lot of my swimmers will do too, just to kind of see where their top speed is at. And it's not that hard to do either. So it's a bit more, I dread a 400 time trial. And I think a lot of other people would too. But 100 time trial, people can go, yeah, all right, I can put up with a minute and a half of pain. So that's not a bad one either.
As I wrote down 400 time trial, that was my thought. That's painful, but but also good as well. Brenton, frequency of drill work, or a lot of people listening in are time poor when it comes to, we want to do all this, not swimming professionally. Is it just a little bit each time, or any approach to including drill work? Yeah,
I'm really conscious that people have already got a lot on their plates. They're working, might have family. Sometimes they're doing 3 sports. So I don't want to be adding in too much else to what they're currently doing. And what we've suggested for the last couple of years is just add in 200 to 400 metres of some drill or technique work as part of your warm-up, and then go about your main session as you would normally do. Because if you do 1 hour of drills once a fortnight, you're not going to do much to change the habits and develop new muscle memory, because it's really about the consistency of the new movement that we're trying to do. So yeah, just keep it short and keep it specific, and do that as often as you can. And even if you're training in a squad, most people can fit in 200 to 400 metres of some choice drills, whatever it might be, to a current squad program. So it covers everyone, and you don't need to spend another half hour after the session to try and fit these drills in.
And it's a tough question, because I'm sure you have many. I've seen many on your YouTube channel, Effortless Swimming, Brenton. What's your favourite drill of all time? If you could only issue one drill, what would it be?
Yeah. Oh, you've stumped me. There's so many to choose from. But no, the 2 that I'd probably prescribe most would be one called doggy scoop, which is all out the front. It's just like you're practicing the catch. I really like that one. I give that to a lot of the people that I coach. And the other one would probably be the YMCA drill, which is one that we came up with after we were having trouble getting, I wouldn't say non-swimmers, but like people who have only swum for a year or 2. It's a drill we came up with to help them get all of the different positions in the catch in the pool, because sometimes we were spending just too long getting them to do a drill right in clinics. And then it wasn't wasted time, but I thought, all right, what's the simplest way for them to get a feel for the key positions that they want in the catch in the pool? And it's this YMCA drill. We've got it up on our YouTube channel so people can check that out. But it's I think that's a really good one for people to do, and I find that it just bridges the gap from some other drills, because it kind of covers all the positions that you need there.
So the doggy scoop, which I've tried after I saw it on your gallery, and I really enjoyed that, and the YMCA drill. You mentioned consistency there, Brenton. One of the things I found enthralling but frustrating with swimming over the years, as a junior triathlete that swum from the age of really 10, is the more time you put in, the better feel you tend to get for the water. And as a triathlete, you're competing with 2 other sports. Around frequency, what advice would you have to the listener who's frustrated because they can't get in a pool 4 times, maybe they can't even manage 3 times? How do you make peace with knowing that more will help, but not always being able to do more?
I had pro triathlete Sam Laidlow on my podcast a few weeks ago, and he said he trains 3 times a week in the pool, yet he's front pack 95% of the time. And he's beaten Frodeno, Kinlay out of the water. So he's a very good swimmer, and he's doing that off 3 sessions a week. And so I asked him about that, and his thought was, if you can get to the pool and make those sessions tough ones to the point where you feel like your arms are going to fall off, then you're probably getting more out of it than if you're doing 4 or 5 swims where they might just be floating up and down and there's not much purpose to them. So that's, I think, one way to approach it, is make sure that the sessions that you are doing are worthwhile. And for me, 3 a week will cover most of your bases. So that's kind of I think the minimum to improve and the minimum to get a pretty good feel for the water. And look, if you can only do 2, you can only do 2. So it's much better than nothing. But 3, I think, is a really good number.
It's a sweet spot. Brenton, you are prolific with your output, everything from obviously the YouTube work through to 5-day catch challenges, Feedback Friday videos, the Instagram gallery. You've got a lot on. If the listener does want to engage with you, what's the best way to start navigating their journey of improving their swimming?
Yeah, I'd say if you haven't seen any of our videos on YouTube, might be a good place to start there. Check out some of the Feedback Friday videos, and that'll give you a really good understanding of what are some of those things that most people get wrong, and then how can they go about improving it. So that's a good place to start. If you are in Australia, we run clinics around the country, mostly Melbourne, Sydney at the moment, but we sometimes get up to Brisbane and then hopefully Perth and Adelaide again soon. So you can get yourself filmed and some analysis there. Otherwise, if you're overseas, then the 5-day catch challenge would be a good place to start. It's only $10. Yeah, the promise there is 5 seconds faster in 5 days. And we've had a ton of people who have taken that up and improved even more than that, a lot of them. So yeah, that's a good place to start. If you're not sure what part of your stroke to work on, everyone can work on their catch. That's what I put together.
And it was 5 seconds per 100, right?
5 seconds per 100. Yeah. Not for 25. Can't promise that yet.
There's not a swimmer on the planet that doesn't want 5 seconds per 100, Brenton. And every guest of the show gets asked 2 set questions, Brenton. And the first being, if you had to boil everything you've learned throughout your professional career to date, and your own swimming career, of course, into one piece of advice to help listeners of the show perform at their physical best, Brenton, what would that be?
It's couldn't sleep last night thinking about this question, but for me, it's very much the mindset that you've got will determine your results in it. But for me, the way you can control your mindset comes down to breathing in a lot of ways. And for me, I love surfing and going out in bigger waves where it's a bit more challenging and it's a bit scarier. That comes down to breathing. So just calming yourself down. If you can steady your breathing, then you can be much more relaxed and in control out there. And I think the same thing goes for swimming. It always comes back to breathing. So that for me is probably the main one, is just controlling your mind using breathing.
Brenton, the other set question being issuing of a physical challenge for the week. So what is Brenton Ford of Effortless Swimming's physical challenge going to be to listeners for the week?
It was going to be a 400 freestyle, but we're going to change it to 100 freestyle. 100 freestyle, all-out effort, see where you're at, and then use that as your benchmark to improve upon from there.
And I think those that are happy to post it publicly should tag you in on Instagram at Effortless Swimming with your time, and maybe throw up the Physical Performance Show tag as well, and we'll see those coming through.
That'd be great.
A bit of accountability.
Exactly.
For those that are comfortable. Brenton, you're a absolutely great asset in the world of endurance sports. And once again, thank you personally, thank you professionally for your contribution today to the Physical Performance Show, and certainly wish you all the best for the rest of 2021 and beyond. Yeah,
thanks, Brad. And I love what you do, and thanks for having me on. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you.
So there you have it, another episode of the Physical Performance Show, and I trust you enjoyed Brenton's sharings today. If you did, then jump over. Please let Brenton know what it was that you enjoyed, or what it is that you're going to apply as a learning from Brenton's sharings. You'll find Brenton easily available over on Instagram at Effortless Swimming, and be sure to also subscribe to the YouTube channel. As mentioned in the show, Brenton's YouTube channel and the content that he outputs are some of my own personal favourite when it comes to improving my triathlon performance. Keep the podsies coming, team. They are a screenshot of an episode that you're enjoying, tagging in the show at Physical Performance Show. We'll reshare those. They are always a lot of fun to see coming through. And if you do take on Brenton's physical challenge, do tag Brenton and the show in on social, sharing your success in conquering the physical challenge for the week. Now, a massive thanks to those that make this show possible each and every week. Our long-standing team of Daryl Misson, our audio engineer, Susan Wilkin on all things show administration, and Matthew Walding on all things show graphic design. Another huge thanks to today's show sponsor, earSHOTS Bluetooth headphones. Quite simply, if you are looking for the best headphones whilst riding or running, look no further than earSHOTS Bluetooth headphones. Use the code TPPS for 10% off your very own pair of earSHOTS headphones. As mentioned, don't miss the upcoming September 4th live stream, Rinny McGregor, Fueling the Endurance Athlete. Tickets are available over at pogophysio.com.au/Rinny McGregor live stream. And of course, if you are a patron of the show already, we'll be granting you complimentary access. And if you'd like to become a patron and support the production of the show, you can do so over at Patreon. Become a Learnings member from just $5 per month. And of course, get complimentary access to our back catalogue and all upcoming live stream events. Finally, if you are an endurance athlete struggling with bone, tendon or joint-related concerns, then our 45-minute online telehealth consultations here at Pogo Physio can be an ideal way to help you get back to your physical best and across what we term your physio finish line. Geography is no longer a boundary. Here's a great success story from Tasmanian competitive recreational triathlete Sarah, who overcame persistent foot symptoms to get back to her triathlon best.
Hey, I'm Sarah. I'm a competitive age group triathlete from Australia, and telehealth 100% works. I did telehealth with Brad for chronic sesamoiditis, and I didn't need any hands-on treatment. I had exercise prescription and load management with my training. And this, along with Brad's expertise and genuine care, got me across my Pogo finish line.
Thanks, Sarah. Once again, pogophysio.com.au/telehealth to schedule your online 45-minute telehealth consultation with myself or any of the Pogo Physio team. If you'd like to provide feedback on the show or share concerns around any niggle, ankle strain, you can reach out to me at b.beer@pogophysio.com.au. And stay tuned for next week's upcoming episode of the show, where we keep the learnings coming your way with an expert edition featuring Amy Harding, PhD of Griffith University, self-confessed bonehead, with Amy having spent the better part of her academic career studying the effect of exercise on bone. Now, given the emergent importance of bone health for endurance athletes, this is an expert edition you are not going to want to miss. So be sure to be tuning in next week as Amy Harding shares around all things exercise and bone health. Until then, keep pursuing your physical best performance. I'm Brad Beer. This has been the Physical Performance Show.